Remote Control. Now you can play the only game show that started in a basement right on your Nintendo Entertainment System. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sean.
It's just the two of us today, which is unfortunate because it is one of those weird three-player game shows. There are a bunch of them. I'm not sure who decided 3 is better than 2 or 4, but I guess maybe it makes the final round thing more interesting when there's not just one versus the other. Now that I think about it, though, it's not weird that it's a 3-player game show. Most game shows are 3 players. So instead, I'm going to divert that silly statement and just talk about the back of the box for a second, because I do think there was a missed opportunity there. It said, now you can play the only game show that started in a basement right on, and it should have been right in your basement, right? Like, I feel like that would have been better than just like right on your... I feel like I just read a statement that anybody could have put together. The basement thing would have been a little more clever copywriting. So that's my editorial note for this episode.
I'd say that, it would have been more like, that whole like play video games in your basement thing. I think that really didn't come on until the late, like the mid-aughts, or maybe the early aughts, when the whole like neckbeard basement dweller meme started to take shape. Like the NES was in the living room, or you know what? It was in the family room.
Yes, the family room. That is a great point, Sean, because remember, it is just the family computer over in Japan, but it's also the entertainment system here. It's supposed to be all-encompassing, even if it just has really a gun, a dance pad, and a robot. Those are all fun things for the family. Every American family wants a gun, a robot, and a dance pad.
I sure do, still.
Now, were you aware that Remote Control was going to be anything related to a game show that happened to also be a real game show on MTV? Or were you expecting, I don't know, I was expecting a RC Pro-Am like game where you drive remote control cars, or maybe you, fiddle with an NES controller and it's your remote control. Anyway, what were you thinking?
I had no idea that this was a game show, let alone an MTV game show. I sort of figured that it was going to be something like a TV, like a TV themed side scroller, and there'd be like, weird, like, I don't know what I'm trying to describe here. There'd be lots of the colored bars like in the background, and that'd be like the things that you jump on, and like, I don't know if you're going to get like stuck in a TV or if it was like based off of like a really obscure 80s movie. But I figured it was going to be something along those lines and not a game show.
Yeah, and what's weird is that this isn't a game show that you'll find again or hear about really again. In fact, while the video game version is coming out, the game show on MTV is being canceled. So it's like a really bad time to release the game, I guess, unless they're saying like, we're canceling the game show on TV because now anybody can play it anywhere. We've reached peak remote control, because the premise of the show is that Ken Ober, the host, wants to be a game show host like his idols, who he has pictures of all over the basement. And so he set up a game show in his basement, has 3 people in these kind of like lazy boy-like chairs. I can't tell if they're supposed to be like strapped against their will or not, or if they're just happy to be there. That part wasn't clear to me. But then, like, you're just playing, you're playing trivia from a TV where you tune into what they're calling TV channels, but are really categories, and categories are based on either TV shows or pop culture related things. And that's always a recipe for success, something that will never age poorly. Everybody will always understand these questions for infinity, right? You definitely got every single thing they were referencing when you got to the trivia portions.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't really get many of these. Probably the majority, no. But like, did you watch this show at all?
I never heard of the show before this, but yes, I did wind up pulling up. I think there's like a full episode available on YouTube.
Oh, there's a lot.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry, I just like Googled it and I pulled up the episode from June 28th, 1989. So, what I watched was just about as strange, stylistically, as the NES game that we're playing. So, what I thought was a series of like, weird art direction decisions actually are totally on brand for this show itself.
Yeah, so I was kind of pleasantly surprised with the show, like the real show. Like it had a young Colin Quinn on it, which I thought was strange. I just remember him being like a really upset like asshole on Comedy Central with like Tough Crowd, and then like what's his Adam Sandler makes appearances. I've never recognized the actual like host, but yeah, it does like bear some resemblances in how it's presented, but it's definitely just a very abridged version of that. Like most of what goes on in this show was sort of trying to be encapsulated into when you select a category in the game, it'll have some like off-color remark about stuff, and then the same kind of humor in the actual channel names or categories.
Yeah, there's like a sketch comedy component to the whole thing where there's not like a overarching plot through the episode per se, but
no,
there is a it's more than just Jeopardy, pick the category, here's the question. There's a lot of and I can't tell you if it's improv or scripted or not, but there's a lot of work that goes into the setup here, which makes this kind of I guess what MTV was going for was like, this is the new kind of game show, right?
Yeah,
this is like it's game show plus comedy.
Very irreverent and like breaking the rules of game shows. Like maybe this was the first one. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't, but it seems like, oh, this is like, it's not your parents' game show. Very MTV of them to do it.
Yes, and there's a very weird aesthetic to the whole thing as well, both the show and the video game. There's a lot of just it's because it's in a basement, but there's a giant Pez dispenser of the guy who was the host of the Newlywed Show. There's that when you lose, your chair goes flinging through what I imagine is a very easily breakable wall to be ejected from, and there's the game show host's mother kind of like chimes in from time to time.
Didn't know that.
Yeah,
that must have been season 2.
Yeah, it wasn't in our video game either, to the best of my knowledge.
That's the thing.
We're missing, I think that's what we're missing in the video game format here, is we're missing a lot. Like, they're still trying to, I don't know, it's like aggressive, self-deprecating humor in the video game still, but there isn't the sort of sketch comedy or, intricacy of the actual show. I don't know, it doesn't even really look like it's in a basement, right? Like, I get that those are couches that they're sitting on, but it doesn't really feel like we, put us in a basement that's recognizable. Give me a washer dryer or something.
So when they're showing the contestants like that, it looks close, but when you're showing the host, like the TV's right, the TV, because it's like so off the wall design and like very exaggerated, but everything else is just like there wasn't just a scrolling like MTV banner in the back that was just a bunch of MTV logos. It was still like the same kind of set design, and it kind of looked like a missed opportunity there.
And MTV and trademarks and incorporated things are like all over this. There's so much like legal stuff on this game where like MTV is both on the trivia thing as a like repeating banner. It's also like the remote control trademark is everywhere. I don't know if you need like the trademark in game. Like I get that you need that on the legal screen, but it just feels weird to have it all over the place. And while we're talking about kind of I guess like the legalities and everything, this game does have a very funny accompanying manual that gets into a lot of that too. And so I'm sure this is probably one that you didn't read.
This
and
is
I don't know
one I read.
I don't know why I thought to read it. I think I was just checking to see how it works with more than one player. So I was going to the manual, but it's very like in the same style as the host of the show, that kind of person talking to you about the stuff in the manual. Because, usually we get like, don't leave your game on for this amount of time and like things that like are required by people. But instead, this one had like, press start when you see the legal mumbo jumbo on the screen. It's like, okay, like that's
funny.
That's funny. Yeah, it's funny enough. And I think that's another thing I want to get into is like, it's funny enough. The show, the show, give or take, maybe the humor didn't age that well, but like the actual video game just isn't funny enough, period. Like, it's not like the jokes just don't land because we don't understand them. It's not actually funny. It's almost has that same problem that Double Dare had, where Double Dare is like a fun game to play because of all the wacky stuff that happens, but in the NES version, like nothing wacky happened.
Yeah, the whole like thing about the show is how kind of it feels unscripted, at least the one I watched, and it sounds like the one you watched too. And there's like jostling back and forth, like kind of poking fun at the contestants from like the peanut gallery with Colin Quinn and whoever they else are. And then you got like the guest presenters that come in for certain categories, and that all just sort of boils down to like the Code of Paint is this MTV show, but like the gameplay itself is just a 3-answer like trivia game. There's really not much in the gameplay that feels like it.
Yeah, essentially, once you've seen what the game has to offer, then it really just survives based on the trivia categories and how much you like TV, because almost all of this is focused on television sitcoms and pop culture stuff
and soap operas for some reason.
The soap opera thing is that was the strangest part, because it's like MTV doesn't even have a hand in those kinds of things. So it's not, their audience isn't watching soap operas, and they're not like owned yet by anybody who was like, making affiliate soap operas. So I'm not sure where that comes from, but yeah, I don't know anything about General Hospital. Don't ask me any General Hospital questions.
It's funny because when the episode of the show that I watched, which is now just like, that is the entire like oeuvre of the show. Like, there's not 3 seasons of this. There was a soap opera category. So apparently maybe just like soap operas were much bigger and more a part of the zeitgeist back then. But yeah, it wasn't made up for the video game, at least.
Or are they just not thinking about how many other things TV could offer? Like, sports are on TV. Where's like, give me a lot of sports categories. You put a news category on or something for news events. Like, you can stretch the definition of what's on TV, right? Just because you've made your categories TV channels.
Gen X's didn't watch the news, Mike. Like that,
but they watched All My Children.
Maybe. Who am I to say?
All right, so even though the game isn't funny, I'm going to go back to the manual because it is funny, and it has a note here on the section where you're picking your character, which is handled very strangely in the game, but I'm not going to complain about it because there's other things to talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
You're really just selecting the face that you want to be. And so you choose, the face, and none of the faces look good, so don't worry about that.
It's on purpose.
It has one of the steps on like getting started to play has like how you choose which face you want to be, and it tries to be funny there. But then it has a little note at the bottom. Note to ugly contestants: if you don't like the way you look after seeing the competition, don't panic. You can cycle back to your little TV using the arrow keys and change to someone else. Too bad it's not so easy off the screen.
Hey.
Yeah, again, you see what I'm saying? It's like the game is like very aggressive at like, you suck and your life, nobody envies you, and you play video games in your basement. Like, it has that kind of culture behind it, even though, as we just established, the video game console is more in the family room right now. So I just feel like this game is trying to be overly hip, but didn't have the same writers attached to it that the actual show had, and it needed that.
Yeah, I think though that might be like very realistic because, and again, this is me viewing it from 30 odd years later, but I think the show was also trying to be too hip. So that's actually sort of truth in television right there. Did you know that the whatever happens to you, like at the end of the second section was? Did you know that was popcorn?
Popcorn?
Did you the stuff that falls around and like goes all over the place?
No, I did not know that was popcorn.
I didn't know until I watched an episode. But it was that stuff that was flying around the legal screen, and then it happens in the game. And like, what the hell? Like, is this a thing that they do every episode? I didn't know what it was supposed to be, but I think it's like popcorn or cereal. I don't know.
Yeah,
sorry, that was just another aside.
I'm not sure if that even adds up, but again, like now that's not basement, that's kitchen material.
Yeah, it should have been like a burst pipe.
So we should get into the flow of the game. As I mentioned, there's 3 contestants. You're answering questions about different categories, soap operas, sure. And so there's 2 rounds of gameplay, and in either round, it doesn't really matter, just the points and such. But in each round of that gameplay, you pick a TV channel from the giant TV. I think there's 9 channels, and once you pick that channel, you get the the category, and then it's anybody's chance to answer the question, which is an interesting thing because it allowed me to control the game a lot more often than like watching the computers win and just continue to select questions and get the opportunity to answer, if you know what I mean. Like there are some shows or some trivia formats where if you just get stuck with like, and the winner goes on until they can't answer a question. Double Dare even has that a little bit. Like if you're not dared, you might have to wait for the computer to get one wrong. I like that you have the opportunity to just buzz in quickly, answer the question, and then the timers are aggressive, thankfully, because they've figured out that we're not going to try to have anybody type in these things. It's just multiple choice, which is obviously the way to go for a video game, especially when it's 8-bit. I'm glad that we saw it here. Any thoughts on not the quality of the questions themselves, but the format?
Well, I guess I haven't really seen too many game shows where only the picker can answer. Like I'm used to the Jeopardy style where it's just like you can pick the category, but everyone's going to get a chance to answer. So I guess I'm glad that they stuck with that. And I don't know if the multiple choice thing, like I think multiple choice is fine, but I think you need like a couple more options because you can really just guess your way through this. And I think if I'm playing against somebody that just gets lucky guessing one of 3 things, like that's not really trivia. That's just being a good at test taking. So the actual execution of the trivia, I think, had a little bit to be desired there.
Yeah, you have a 33% chance of just guessing right because there's only 3 options. 4 would have been fine, I suppose. But also, and probably more importantly, the one of the selected answers is usually, not always, but is usually like a joke answer too. That's very easy to kind of decipher and be like, well, so
it's 50-50 then.
Right, it's not that one. Not always, of course, but that's the entirety of the game show, because even when you finally do get to the 3rd round, the lightning round, I think what they call the think real fast round, that is still a format of the same thing where you're being asked a question and then you are both able to simultaneously answer, and whoever answers first wins. That's an interesting twist on answering questions, like a new way to answer said questions, but it's not really like it's not different for the sake of what the game is offering. And so realistically, throughout the entirety of your gameplay experience, you are doing nothing more in this game other than just selecting facts on a screen, you know? And I think that's not what a video game was designed for.
I think that's a really harsh way to say it, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because I was thinking about this in general, not even just for game show games, but just in general for video games. What does it need? What do you actually think a video game needs to not just be on our essential games list, but to be considered like a good game and everything? And I don't think just emulating what worked on TV is going to, like, you know, think about it. If the Rugrats video game, which doesn't exist, so I don't know why I went to them, but I got Nickelodeon on the mind from work. If the Rugrats video game was you just watch an episode, but in video game format, right? Like, that's not a video game either. Like, yeah, that's how the show worked, but, you know, it's like you don't have, like, instead you want to put yourself in a brand new adventure, and obviously, like, it's tougher with a game show, but there needed to be something more here, just like there needs to be more in the Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy video games. Like, I guess I'm just saying in general, like, multiple choice trivia games
you know
are only
what?
going to offer you so much.
I'm not going to go into the muddy waters of saying what defines a video game, because I think we could start yelling at each other if it goes down a certain route. But when it comes to something like this, like, in my opinion, the Wheel of Fortune games are actually really good at being Wheel of Fortune. It is a very easy game to sort of systematize there. And Jeopardy's not terrible either. Like, yeah, it's kind of annoying that you gotta type it all in, and, like, the computers will either get it right or completely just glitch out. But at least, like, that's still the game from your perspective. It's either right or wrong, and, like, you're playing Jeopardy. Like, in this, you're not playing Remote Control on MTV. In Remote Control on MTV, they don't give you a bunch of multiple choice questions, and you just have to pick between the three options. In Remote Control, the video game, there aren't the, like, sort of more visual questions or categories where you actually have to look at a TV screen and tell them what that is. Like, none of that's in here. So this isn't even a really good emulation of the TV show as you described it. This is actually porting a TV show into Trivial Pursuit.
It doesn't even have the going through the wall with the chairs for elimination. Instead,
you get zapped and blown.
Yeah, you
up,
get lightning. Yeah, you get lightning strikes, which is, I don't know. I guess that's weirder thing to happen in a basement, right? Like, I definitely think that's a little alarming. But I don't know. I would have preferred to just stick to the show format, right? Of going through the breakable wall. Like, that's fun.
Well, that would require some animation.
Right. And we can't be expected of that. What else was I say? But, you know, one thing it does have that the show had too, but I guess does offer a little bit of a switch up, is that certain channels are, I guess, like special channels that aren't just the normal TV categories. Instead, you'll have to, like, answer a math problem, or you'll just automatically lose 10 points when you select the home shopping zone channel. Like, you see my problem here is, like, that this was a chance for the video game version to the special channel, like, is more interactive because you're playing an interactive medium.
Yeah.
But instead, they still just chose to make it like, actually, these special channels are even more simple than the multiple choice ones, because now you're either just doing, generic math, or you're not even doing anything. We're just telling you what's happened.
Yeah. I think one thing that I do appreciate that the game doesn't do is just even bother pretending that you're going to be excited to win, like, a 32 by 8 picture of a car, like, and like, you don't have to cycle through that, like, oh, you win this cruise that you don't actually get to take. Like, I know that's still something that, like, weirdly bothers me, but I'm glad it's not here.
Right, yeah. Instead, you're just the winner.
You're just the winner. That's fine. That's all you gotta be.
So what's the goal here for MTV? Is it just like brand recognition? Because keep in mind, like the show probably wasn't announced to be canceled, but is canceled. The game, so it's not about syndication reruns or whatever. Is it just about getting that MTV logo all over a video game and making sure that, you make some final sales on this now defunct IP?
You gotta assume that when they greenlit the video game that they hadn't already canceled it and they had already put the resources into the game and, just to make their money back, they released it. That's what I have to guess.
I totally believe that both can be true as somebody who now works at the, what is it, sister network of one of these.
Parent?
Is that, the parent we're both owned by the same parent.
So you're the sister of the parent.
There you go, yeah. That's the name of the movie, The Sister of the Parent's Child.
That would make you the aunt. Never mind,
Damn.
Go ahead.
Anyway, what I was going to say is I believe that it's totally possible that one department, the games department, says, all right, our next game we're going to make is the remote control game show, and they never check or talk to the production team, who then, is full swing just not making another season. And so when it comes out, that's when everybody finally finds out about it, and it's just one of those things that the next day in the office you're just like, oh no, but nobody really cares.
That happens at my company all the time too. There's just a lot of corporate miscommunication, but we're not here talking about bad things that our company does,
No, of course not. And I don't think back then remote control was really a hotly debated topic either at the MTV studios, right? Do you think they cared if they put out a good game or not? The game got released, it sold some copies surely, and everybody walked off happier. Except for the people who probably bought the game. Is this the essential games list? What's happening right now? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Without talking about the show, because this isn't a review of the show, which I think you're saying you found pretty decent. I enjoyed it. My version on YouTube came complete with commercials as well, so I enjoyed
mine didn't come with the commercials.
I really enjoyed seeing those old commercials, and I didn't know that MTV was playing Coors Light commercials. I would think that they weren't allowed to do that because it's you have a Coors Light commercial followed by a Coca-Cola commercial, and it's what's the audience here, right? Teens. So
I'm gonna take the opportunity you've given me after explicitly asking me not to talk about the actual television show and then proceeding to talk about the television show to talk about the television show one more time. The last time, I really liked the prizes, the actual prizes that you got. Because again, the show's marketed towards young people. So one of the prizes is a pair of Ray-Bans, which I thought was strange because this is a game show, not a county fair. So it was weird to see that the first prize is something as mundane as a pair of sunglasses. Maybe they're really expensive, I don't know. And then there's a typewriter. Because college kids need a typewriter because they're not going to bring home they're not going to put a Commodore in there to write stuff that has some kind of printing unit, right? So there's a typewriter, and then it kind of there's boom boxes, something very 80s 90s, and then there's a car if you get all the stuff right at the end. But I just thought it was funny, I kind of forget that a lot of TV shows didn't have a crazy budget for the actual prizes.
And do you think that they made the contestants dress up like idiots?
Oh, no. That's just that was the style at the time.
That was the style at the time. Cool. No, because I'm just saying, as we mentioned, the video game version of these people, their faces are also kind of all smushed up, and smushed up is actually perfect. I'm not even going to expand on that. They really do look smushed. Something's going on there. Young people
in the late 80s, early 90s do just look weird. I don't know if it was the haircuts. I know a lot of our listeners are of this age group, so I'm not going to be too harsh. But I mean, you could say the same thing about us back in the day. Everyone looked weird when they were younger.
You know what the remote control video game might be better than, though?
Go on.
The remote control board game.
There was one?
I saw it at the end of my episode. They were advertising, don't miss your chance to take remote control home with the remote control board game. So the board game did come out before the video game. But now, like, all of the pressure of being a funny host is on you, right? Like, at home, like, at least the video game version, like, you're not hosting.
I think they sold it specifically at like improv groups. Like you had to get the actual board game to join like the improv troupe.
One time I went to like a board game bar down in Atlanta, and I was like really excited by the prospect of that. But it was really just a bar with a bunch of board games.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it wasn't like, oh, people come here to play those board games. They just have board games. And the board game that they had that I was like, I just have to find out how the hell this works is the Family Ties board game. And that, you know, the show with Michael J. Fox. And I just was like, it was one of those things where I look at the box and I'm like, what is the game? Like, I was just so intrigued by that.
Is it just Family Ties trivia?
No, I'm sure that's worked in there at some point or another, but no, it's just a really stupid, complicated game for no reason. And there's a bunch of these apparently, like a bunch of sitcoms got board games because that was another way to like make money off your property.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that's what I'm gonna get to in the essential games list. And what I was getting to just a second ago is that, you know, when you have an established intellectual property that you then bring into the video game space, it doesn't have to be shameless. And I'm not saying that there's nothing redeeming about this. Heck, if you ever wanted to see the Brady Bunch and applied physics put together for trivia questions, well, I got news for you. This game has it. This game has a whole thing where you don't need to know anything about the Brady Bunch other than, I suppose, the names of the characters. You're just answering physics questions. That's not a category. That doesn't rely on any trivia. That's no different than the math questions. My point being that, you know, if you are an established property, when you bring something else into the fold, it has to add to that. How does it like enhance or add, or what does it do? And the video game really doesn't do anything. It doesn't have to exist, and it's better off that I didn't know that this game was a thing, just like I didn't need to know that the game show was a thing, because it's never rerun since it was off the air. Yeah, this is going to be a no from me. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's not essential. This is an obvious cash grab. There really isn't much love for the show, even in the game. Like, there's some stuff that makes it feel like it a little bit. Like, I might throw the show on randomly on YouTube now because I think that, like, this kind of obscure really speaks to me, and it does have some people that I do recognize on there, but that's just another form of borrowed nostalgia. That has nothing to do with this game, which is not good.
I was wondering when Adam Sandler joined Saturday Night Live. It seems like it was after this, so that's kind of cool. You get your chance at a young Adam Sandler on the TV show version of Remote Control. He's funny when he's young. I saw one of his like first stand-ups ever on YouTube, and I was like, man, he's got like a different rhythm and cadence to himself, and carries himself like he hates his life. I was like, it's kind of funny. Now he's like, yeah, I'll shoot any movie as long as I get to go on vacation with my kids while I'm on the movie.
It depends on what modern movie you're talking about. He can still nail hates his life wallowing.
Yeah, in fact, actually, even in those movies, right, the vacation movies with the kids, he still manages to do it. You know, this game was also worth it for the manual, though. I would say, honestly, if you're a fan of Remote Control, read the manual. That's probably, you know, part of the lore. That'll help enhance, you know, like that'll help enhance your Remote Control experience more than playing the game would. Next week, we'll be playing Adventures in the Magic Kingdom. So we're going to Disney World, I guess, baby.